Hello and welcome, fellow lifelong learners. Thanks for joining me for One More Thing, a radio show all about cultivating our most valuable asset, our mind, and fostering a sense of curiosity to learn one more thing. We feature passionate practitioners and seasoned experts in numerous areas of interest for lifelong learners of all ages. One More Thing is sponsored by Kiffin & Company, a corporate learning and talent development consulting firm, and I'm your host, Kiffin McCoy Albert, a certified professional in talent development, learning advocate, and your fellow lifelong learner. Welcome to the show. When I was a kid, we used to have these competitions to see who could hold their breath the longest. Often it was underwater at the pool. And I remember one of my uncles could hold his breath for an incredibly long time. In addition to holding our breath, sometimes the rule was that you had to let your breath out really slow when you came up and not just let it whoosh out. I had forgotten about the intensity of the feelings when holding and controlling my breath back then until I started talking to today's guest and preparing for this episode. While our childhood game was nowhere near the intentional transformational breath work that's the topic for today's show, it did make me start to think about so much more about my own breathing. How and when and how long for intake, holding, and letting it out. If you're a skeptic of all things wooey, keep in mind that breathing has been around since the beginning of living beings. And it's also rooted in ancient practices and methodologies and is now being researched and paired with modern science. My fascinating conversation with Tracey O'Hara is coming up right after this.
Maximize impact with tailored solutions by partnering with Kiffin & Company. Developing your team is an investment, but it doesn't have to be just an expense. Discover more at kiffinandcompany.com and start your journey to effective learning today.
After a near-death experience transformed her life, Tracey O'Hara found Kundalini Yoga. She studied in India under several esteemed mentors to become a teacher of this practice, with which she has found healing from alcohol addiction and eating disorder, PTSD, and the trauma of sexual abuse. She is now certified in multiple yoga practices, is a Tony Robbins certified life coach, and is a certified Reset It specialist. She is also a certified raw vegan chef and chocolatier. That's going to be our part two of our conversation. Her mission is to help others overcome emotional wounds and addictions through yoga, mantra, meditation, and breath work. She has dedicated her life to empowering others to heal, grow, and find peace within themselves. I am getting more excited about this conversation as I tell you about Tracey. We could obviously talk about any number of these facets of her expertise, but for now, our focus is on breath work and mindfulness. From my first conversation with Tracey, I knew there was a depth to her beyond the surface, but I had no idea how interesting these waters were going to become. I really am excited to introduce you to Tracey O'Hara and share this conversation with y'all. Tracey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kiffin. So nice to be here. So thank you so much for asking me. It's always a pleasure and a privilege.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm anxious to jump right into learning about breath work and its impact, but let's talk a little bit more about your background and how you got started in this realm. Would you start off telling us a little more about your story?
Sure. I was in a relationship that was quite abusive. And at some point, 14 years later, I was able to break free from that relationship. And I had a radical awakening. And that radical awakening brought me, long story short, into a place where I put myself. It was a rehab because I needed to reset myself. I was actually dying on the floor from alcoholism, wishing I could die, and it didn't happen. I had a radical awakening. A voice spoke to me, and within that voice, it took me on a journey of healing myself and a journey of teaching others how to heal themselves. First, it started with meditation. I had no idea, but I was starting to channel meditations and teach meditations. Then that channeling took me to yoga, which I could not stand yoga at the time. I could not stand it. And when I heard that I needed to go into yoga and yoga training, I was like, okay, well, you've taken me this far. I'm going to go. So I did. And at the end of that training, once again, I had another awakening. And I started teaching what's called Kundalini Yoga without any training at all. So Kundalini Yoga is quite an intense yoga. It's not what you see out there with the twisting, the binding, the posturing. What it does is it resets the nervous system. And when we reset the nervous system, we reset the mind. And we do that through a number of modalities. One is chanting, one is Kriya, and another one is breath work. Breath work is super powerful. You don't have to do any of the rest. Just if you started breath work for 15 minutes a day. I started with one, I'll be honest with you. I started with 1 minute a day because the way my mind was so busy and just never stopping, I started with one. Long story short, here I am teaching it, but it is so powerful. Breath work, breath is our life force. It's our life source. Without breath, we are not here. And I know people are like, oh, breath work, that sounds so boring. It's anything but boring. Because the way I teach it through the ancient texts is quite invigorating. And what it does is it stops the mind. When we can hold our breath and do certain breathing techniques, it stops the mind and it strengthens the nervous system. So a strong nervous system is a person that has a lot of courage, a lot of energy, a lot of creativity. It just, we need a strong nervous system, right? When we don't have a strong nervous system, we fall short. We don't really embody our truth. And through the breath work, we actually stop and pause. And in that pause, we come into awareness. And when we are in that space of awareness, we can hear the truth of the mind and the negative narrative of the mind. So that's what really creates awareness and consciousness. Let me just throw this little fact out there. Human beings, adults, think 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. 95% of those thoughts come from the unconscious, which means we're not aware of them. 5% of our thoughts in a day are conscious. Thus, our life, 95% of our life is unconscious. 5% of our life, if we're lucky, is conscious. So that, just listening to that, that's a huge understanding of how the mind is running a narrative that's not very kind to ourselves. And we all know this. We're all thinking, I'm not enough. I don't have enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I don't have beautiful hair. I don't have what this person has. I don't have, which equates into I'm not enough. That is the unconscious mind. And 95% of that is not true. It's not who we are. And when you think about that, that is sad. That's sad that we live through that loop that's constantly running through our mind, but it's not actually who we are. And so breath work puts a halt on all of that. It creates a softer narrative. It gives you a lot of joy, creativity, and in that there's a lot of prosperity. And just basic line is that we are happier individuals when we do breathing techniques.
It's interesting. So just this morning, I was at a women's group meeting, and the topic was about overcoming comparison. And, you know, you've heard the adage of comparison is the thief of joy. And she talked a little bit and gave a couple of kind of key ways to try to overcome comparison. And breath work was not one of them. But I, because of our conversations and all, I did think about that with a couple of the things that she said. I thought, well, oh, that's good. And if that you'd stop and breathe. You know, I've been at big conferences. I've been in just a room with one other person where they say something like, okay, just pause for a minute and take 3 deep breaths. Just taking those 3 deep, slow in, slow out breaths can make a huge difference in your moment, right? So I've heard those kind of things for a long time, but this that I have been hearing, you know, in our conversations, it's just so different. It's much more, I don't want to say it's much more involved to the point where it kind of turns people off, but it's much more involved because it's not just take a deep breath and let it out. It's more than that. And so can you tell us a little bit more about kind of the process, like why you do certain things? What should we know?
Yes, that's why I say breath work can, you know, when people hear breath work, they're like, oh God, that sounds so boring. It's not, because you're just not receiving the right information on how breath work can really enhance who you are. So when we inhale through our nose in certain ways, like sniffing in, like I've taught you, it's like, and then you hold
the quick breaths, the quick intakes with your nose.
You hold the breath. And then that stops the mind. And you'll notice that when people hold their breath, the mind starts to scream because the ego does not want to be controlled. So that in and of itself, by holding the breath, and we start at maybe 2 seconds or 3 seconds, you know, we start where the student is at. and then we exhale slowly. What we're doing is we're stimulating the endocrine system, which is the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, the pineal gland. And when they do that specifically, we create a euphoric feeling throughout the body, because now the endocrine system is secreting its happy hormones, the serotonin, the melatonin. And when you're doing that consistently, you just come into a euphoric feeling environment within inside of yourself. And then the intuition speaks to you. You can hear the intuition loudly in there, and it gives you the direction. If you're asking a question, you ask the intuition. But it's listening and getting used to hearing the intuition again, because we do not listen to our intuition. Every once in a while, we may have an aha moment because the mind is chattering. How can we hear our intuition? It overrides. The intuition is very soft and subtle, and it's quick. So we have to actually stop the mind from chattering, and then we can hear what we're meant to hear. And just in doing that, that's super empowering, to where those limited beliefs fall away, because you actually experience this self-love. That's why I love breathwork. I love teaching breathwork, because it takes you on a journey. So when we do that breathwork, sometimes you can actually excrete what's called DMT, the body, the brain's hallucinogenic chemical. People take, hallucinogenics to have that experience. Well, the brain itself, when you do things properly with breathwork, you can stimulate that hallucinogenic, and then you go on another journey. It's quite dramatic. It's not scary. It's really euphoric, because you go into a different realm and you really come to understand who you are on a soul level. And that's what we're missing. We're missing that piece to get us into that experience. We can talk it all we want, but if we don't actually experience it, how do we understand it, or how do we even know that it's real?
So am I understanding that one of the benefits / purpose of breath work is to help you quiet your mind so that you can hear what you really need to hear from yourself? Is that, I mean, it sounds kind of silly, but it seems like that's the best way to say it. Is
Absolutely. The cells in the body are like little brains. Every single one of them is a little brain. So when we are thinking negative thoughts, we are stimulating that little brain. We're creating that vibration, right? I'm going to bring you back to where we think 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. All of those thoughts are constantly stimulating those brains in the body, the nervous system, and the cells. And when you're doing that on a negative level, I mean, that gives you an insight to what you're actually doing to the body itself. This is where dis-ease comes from. If we can stop that through the breath work, which we can use that tool, because the tool is God-given to you, we stop that negative thought, we stop that vibration in the body, and you actually create a vibration outside of your body that matches the heart vibration. So we're trying to sync it. We're trying to sync that heart vibration, that soul vibration inside of the body. So then that vibration vibrates outside of the body. Then you start attracting like this is what we talk about, attract like. The thoughts in the mind, which are, resonate within you, start to resonate without. So it's within and without. But if we're constantly thinking those negative thoughts because we don't ever stop them, then we're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So I'll bring it back to what the breath work does. The breath work totally changes your body environment, inward and outward. Through the techniques, I can't really explain them here in a short period of time, but just know that they just change the mind, the narrative, the negative narrative that goes on and on and on that we can't stop.
So I border on this. I am very practical. For those of us who are skeptical, maybe, I'm not sure the right word to use, but I guess I'm going to use skeptical right now. Okay, I get it. Like breathing and doing deep breaths and things like that. I get it. I understand it. I get oxygen to the cells, all of those kinds of things. But for this idea of the euphoric feeling, but yet you're interested, right? So for myself, when we first talked, I was like, whoa, this is outside of what my norm, but also I'm intrigued. So where should someone start if they have some interest in exploring this?
You mean looking into the internet to do it, or looking into?
I mean, is it something that they need to have a certified person? Do they need to just have someone who does the practice themselves? Is it something that they can research on their own?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of it out there.
But there's a lot of misinformation too. So that's, I guess, what I'm trying to say is, like, where do you start if you're a newbie and you're hearing this? Where's your starting point?
Okay, so well, beginners, I would look in your area to see if there's somebody teaching breathwork. Check out yoga studios. Yoga studios, you know, they're notorious for breathing, right? Getting to the breath. But I would look specifically for a class that adds breathing in, because not all yoga teachers or yoga classes add breath in. You could look for a Kundalini Yoga class in your area. That's profound. That's life-changing. I also sell videos, but I don't know that we're here to talk about that. I'm just here to talk about breath work and the power of it. If they wanted to start it, I would start local, because you don't really want to do something through the internet where you don't know the person. Like you said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So look locally, even buy a book on simple breathing techniques and the benefits of it. I mean, that's a great way to start. Find a book that will teach you the understanding of it, the deeper understanding of it, and how to start off gently with it. Because if you overdo it, if you overshoot the goal, you're not going to do it anymore. And I find that it's really difficult to get people to want to do breath work. And then when they do the breath work, the practices, their life changes because their mind starts changing. And when the mind starts changing, everything in your life starts changing. We call it kind of like peeling the onion.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited about it because in working with you, I have the 20-minute session, a video that I follow of yours, and I'm very new to it. So obviously I'm still learning and getting myself into the habit and all. But I will say I did it. There was a hesitancy, but almost, I wish I could think of the right word, but grudgingly is too strong. But
well, hesitancy is a great word. Why are you hesitant? I mean, I'd love to know, why are people hesitant to do this? But I think because we live in such a fast-paced world, it's not a silver bullet. It's not a pill you can take. It's actually that you have to sit down and you have to actually apply the technique. I find that people don't really want to do this. I mean, I have a lot of students that do it, right? Because I've taught them how to do it through my teachings of Kundalini Yoga. But I find that a lot of people, when they become stuck between a rock and a hard place because they have physical issues now that they need to address, that's when they come to me. I wish people would come to me before, because breath work is your medicine. It's breath, it's prana, it's life force. We just take it for granted. And then at some point, not for everybody, but it just becomes a desperate situation, where I would love for it to not become a desperate situation, but to really apply it and adopt it into their life, just even for 1 minute. Because 1 minute will bring you such euphoria that you'll want to do it for 2 minutes. Then you'll want to do it for 3 minutes. But realistically, start where you're at. If you're a beginner, start with 1 minute. 1 minute of inhaling through the nose, maybe in 4 segments, like holding for 2 seconds, and then exhaling through the nose in 4 segments. It's that simple. But you're going to start to notice the awareness in the mind. You're going to start to feel this tingling in the body. And that's just going to bring you back into quieting the mind, because then you're going to notice, wow, that felt really good. I want to do it again. And then you're going to start to notice how your day changes, because you're changing inside, you're quieting the mind, you're becoming aware. Everything around you is going to shift and change. And that's what's super exciting about it. But we do call it breath work. And people don't want to hear about breath work. You know why? Because we've been given breath work. We've been given a breath. If we weren't given our breath and we needed this, we'd work for it.
Well, when I started those 20-minute sessions, thank you for the reminder that, just the minute or two, if you can't make the time, don't want to make the time, whatever, that's still something. But with those 20-minute, which is not that long, but I remember the first, and I'm only like 2 weeks in or something, but the first couple of times it was very uncomfortable at the beginning. But the thing that interested me, the idea of being able to quiet the mind, because my mind goes 90 miles an hour all the time, lots of self-talk, lots of positive talk, but it's just like on and on and on all the time. And so it was very uncomfortable. And when I didn't have that euphoric feeling the first time, I'm like, oh, well, I must not be doing something right, or it's not going to work for me, all of those kinds of things. But then after a few times, I'm not going to say that I'm at the point yet where it's not uncomfortable to start, because it just is for me. But it's to the point where as I'm doing it, yes, like I can feel myself slowing down and some of that chatter quieting. So I think that it's a really important point that you made, that we are in a time, in a society where a pill that can numb you, we want immediate gratification, and that's just not how it works. We didn't get into this place of crazy chatter in a hot second. How can we expect to get out of it? I appreciate that point, because I think that's a huge one to make.
I love what you said. I don't want to sit down for 15 minutes. How can you not give your body that gives you everything 15 minutes to reset? That's what it is. You're just resetting your nervous system and your brain, and the gifts that come to you are far outweigh what you actually put into it.
Yeah.
Even if it's 1 minute, 1 minute turns into 2 minutes, because you're receiving benefits almost immediately, if not immediately. At least you feel a difference in the mind, in the chatter, in that negative narrative that keeps you away from it. Because the mind doesn't want to shut up. If you're listening to your mind doesn't want you to benefit in any way, health, body, mind. Otherwise, it'd be simple, easy for all of us.
Tracey O'Hara is a certified Reset It specialist. Reset It blends ancient teachings with modern mindfulness practices, neuroscience, and quantum physics during 2 90-minute sessions. Reset It is a transformative process for personal growth designed to help individuals achieve radical evolution in their lives. With the Reset It method, Tracey teaches her clients a simple method to break free from the chains of those negative attachments, break those barriers, and level up their mindset for a happier, more productive, and creative life. Contact Tracey to reset, re-own, and restart your life today. Tracey, Tracey, at reset-it.ca. And learn more about the Reset It method at reset-it.ca. Are there different methodologies with breath work? Are there different methodologies and practices that are, I don't know, named, or that you can kind of give us a high level overview?
Sure. Alternate nostril breathing is a very basic breath, but it's very beneficial. So you just breathe through the nostrils. It's simple, and it also rebalances the nervous system. So you breathe.
Yeah, so folks who are just listening and not seeing our video chat, you're saying that they can look it up, but ultimately, I think you were talking about where you're in holding one side of your nostril closed and breathing through the other, and that's in a simple conversation. That's what it is.
Correct. There's also breathing through your nose in 4 segments, inhale, hold the breath for as long as you can comfortably. And just exhale through the nose as slow as you possibly can. That's going to reset your nervous system and your brain. It's going to quiet it down. Again, I'll say start with 1 minute. If it feels good enough, start with 2 minutes. Then start with 3 minutes. Before you know it, you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be like, wow, this is so powerful. It's our breath. It's our life force. Why wouldn't it be powerful?
Yeah.
We just take it for granted. We overlook it. We're not taught to use it. I could teach 100 different breathing techniques. It's all about the same purpose, quieting the mind. And then as you become more advanced in it, there's more advanced practices for it. So you can go deeper and deeper in the quieting of the mind. I can sit down. I know this is going to sound intense, but I can sit down and breathe for an hour and a half using different techniques. As I said in the beginning, I started with 1 minute. But the desire of the body and the mind starts to really want more and really want more. It craves it. We just stop the brain from chattering, which is so healing. A lot of people are coming up with dis-ease. Dis-ease comes from the mind. Listen to the word dis-ease. Dis-ease turns into disease. If we're not listening and we're constantly listening to this thing that doesn't have our best interest 95% of the time, need to stop and take a breath. And I know that's very cliche. I know. And I know that because I've been teaching this for 18 years, and it betters your skin. It betters sometimes you almost have to go into the cosmetics of what it's going to better, right? What is going to make you look better. Your thoughts will be clearer. You'll start to listen to your intuition more. So you'll have more clarity. You're going to definitely have more energy. Everything, even the choices in what you eat are going to be different because you're bringing awareness in. And once you start bringing that awareness in, you're like, no, I don't want that. This is better for me.
You have a series of videos that you sell, you mentioned. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way that they can contact you?
So they can email me at Tracey with an E at resetit, RESET-IT.ca, and just tell them that they're from, you heard this information from Kiffin.
Tracey, I always try to wrap up every episode asking my guest, what is it that you are currently learning about?
Right now, I'm working on really learning and mastering how to master the mind to manifest whatever you want. And I find it really fascinating because I come from all this ancient technology. And now I'm bringing it into the modern technology, super quick, fast, and fun. So I'm really into that right now. I love the brain and the body. I just want to know how it all works synergistically, so I can have the best life.
Yeah.
And I want to share that with everybody.
Gosh, if we could all manifest our best life by just using our body and mind that we already have, we just need to harness control. Like that's an amazing concept.
Yeah. Awesome. I love how you just put that, harness control.
I like it. Feel free to use it. I'll, we'll trademark it or something. Well, I really, really appreciate you being here today. And I do want to mention that this is part one. Part two of our conversation, we're going to talk about Tracey's raw vegan chefness. Not really a word, but we want to talk about that. So I hope that you will tune back in for part two. And Tracey, again, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kiffin. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
A few things from my conversation with Tracey stand out to me from a workplace learning standpoint, but I'm just going to touch on two of them. First, she has been practicing and teaching multiple methodologies and techniques for years and still continues to learn more about those practices as well as new information about the modern science related to these practices. I love this because it's yet another example of how important continuous learning is. No matter what organization or role we are in, we should all be continuing to practice and learn. Second, she talked about the fact that there are many techniques for breathing with some variation of what and why, but ultimately they serve the same purpose, quieting the mind and improving overall health. When I think about all of the methods and models for teaching and learning, this one may work better for some while that one is more successful for others. But keeping your ultimate outcome in mind is vital to choosing the what and how of your practice, whether we're talking about breathwork or on-the-job work. Thank you again to my guest, Tracey O'Hara. Thank you to today's sponsor, Reset It. Reset, reown, and restart. And thank you for tuning in week after week. You've been listening to One More Thing, a radio show on the Power Me Up radio station on iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Kiffin McCoy Albert. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to you tuning in next time as we continue cultivating your mind with one more thing.